Yeah, I don't know where you go. It doesn't like the way you have to go home. You might have to.
How have you guys already turned this in? We haven't even had the group discussion yet.
And I paid mine because he said they're gonna do that. My ad.
That's okay. We'll figure it out.
My bad. I thought you wanted us to turn it in before class.
That's not a problem, and you can still go in and fix it. I was just going, wow, I'm just not used to you guys coming this prepared to class. I mean, I put up an assignment this morning and I've already had 4 people turn it in. I've never had that kind of participation this quick.
Is there a turn-in for this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I brought it physically. Do you prefer?
Well, I don't want it in paper. I want you to turn it in online. But
Okay.
what we're going to do today is we're going to be putting you in groups so you can talk about it. So if you've already written it, that's fine. What I would recommend is that you take time during the group discussion to share some of your findings and get feedback on, so this is how I explained this. Does that make sense? Or how might I edit this? That's beneficial to somebody who hasn't written it because it gives them a chance to kind of see how somebody else did it. You're getting feedback from people that might not have done it yet, but that improves the quality of what you've already done. So it's kind of a win-win for you kind of situation. So Kyle, in that case, I would just pull out what you got and you can share that with people and you're good to go.
Actually, I had a question. Can I, would you be offended if I left about 15 minutes early?
I would be so freaking mortally offended I might chase you out of the classroom.
I accidentally scheduled a meeting for 1:30.
You do realize I'm joking, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so are you gonna be able to get to your meeting on time if you leave at
It's,
15?
Mr. Clark.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, and so that time period is kind of what is gonna be used for the group discussion. I'm hoping to get the question section done as quickly as possible so I can give you more time for the group discussion, but we'll kind of go from there. So,
Okay.
yeah, if you need to go, you need to go. I get that, so it's not a big deal. All right, so, yes,
I have an idea.
okay,
So you know how we get class credit or like the in-classroom credit for when you upvote our ideas or our comments and stuff?
yeah,
What I was thinking is that, because I've never seen it happen before, is if 5 students upvote one person's comment, I think that they should also get that same credit.
the only concern I have with that, because I like that, but there is a possibility of abuse of, friends just automatically clicking on each other. And if you had 5 other students in the program in the class, that could lend to abuse. So how might we be able to address that concern? I agree that I think you guys should get as much of a say in what is good as I do. I'm totally good with that, but that's the concern. Sam?
Yeah, realistically, though, you should be able just to read it and go, I don't understand why 5 people would like this. So like, there can't be 5 people that all think the same kind of thing. So I don't think it'd be that big of an issue.
Well, because the thing is that I would still look at what the comment was, and if I looked at I mean, basically what you're saying is, help me to see what comments am I maybe not seeing the same way you do. I will tell you that there are some students that have consistently gotten and I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, Sam, because I've been really impressed with the comments that you made. I think we can all agree with that. But if I give you that credit every single time, then it gets a little overwhelming. And so even though you had great comments this time, I actually want you to be able to participate in class rather than always just coming in and being skipped over, right?
Yeah.
But you know what, here's what I will do, Anthony. I'm going to do you one better. I will look at every person that upvotes a comment. I will automatically look to see if that is one that I will give credit to. So it doesn't have to be 5. If anybody found a comment useful, before I go in to grade it, I will automatically look to see if I can give that person that participation option.
Okay, because I was just yesterday, and I found this one comment that I really liked. And so I upvoted it, and it was at like 3 upvotes. And I was like, oh, hey, I've never seen anyone get 3 or more. So I think that if someone gets it for us to do like such a good comment to get like 5 upvotes, then.
And the real focus of that getting marked ahead of time is that it gives you a chance. First of all, it acknowledges the value that you brought to class. And then the second is that it allows me to be able to focus on folks that I haven't seen that output yet, but that I think that when you answer a question, it gives me a better chance to give you full credit for participating. Because there are some folks who, it seems like everybody's jiving with this perusal stuff, but there are some people that I think are still a little hesitant. They're not sure or they look at something and they understand something. But man, typing that out in a way that sounds intelligent is just, right? And so I end up kind of typing something I type on Facebook, and I don't want to penalize anybody.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is like trying to make comments sometimes. Like if I were to speak to someone about the subject, I can kind of read them. Like, okay, maybe they're not super comfortable with what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to pull it off. I can't do that if I'm posting on the computer. So sometimes I start a post and I'm like, I don't want to offend somebody. I don't want to make it seem like I'm going after them. So I just delete the whole post.
Well, but one of the things, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I saw today, especially in the video, I really got to start seeing people agreeing and disagreeing with each other. And that is, I don't want this to be a class of, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I appreciate. And what I also saw, which I was really super excited about, was people saying, okay, now that I've heard this position, I'm subtly changing or I'm adapting what I originally said, because I think that you, even though you disagree with me, made a valid point. So I'm going to amend my original position to address some of what I saw and what you said that was correct or equally valid. And that's the sign of critical thinking, which is what I desperately need this class to be. And so seeing that in your comments, oh guys, I'm really glad that I have 2 doors to my office. I have an outer door and then an inner door, because it would have been kind of embarrassing, because I'm like pounding on it, yes, that's what I mean, kind of stuff. And so I'm kind of glad that I didn't, well, I guess I just did. But nevertheless, okay, so Anthony, that is an excellent point, Sam. I appreciate your perspective. And so that's what I will start doing. I will start looking. So I'm going to encourage you, as you're reading comments from other folks, if you found it to be a particularly well-written or insightful comment, click on the upvote, so that way you're drawing my attention to those. Is that cool with everybody? Okay, so like I said, let me get started with the quiz, or not the quiz, but the in-class questions first, so we can get through those, and that gives us more time to kind of work out some of the elements with the big gulp. So, okay. So Jack, you're up first. And so I brought with me the class list from last class. So the questions that we've already answered, I can identify those so that we can make sure that we get everything covered, okay? So Jack, are you ready?
Yep. I thought I'd start with number 9.
Number 9 has already been done.
Oh, what, like last week, you mean?
Last class. You can blame Tanner. He was the one that took it. So you can go and beat on him later.
Okay. I guess I'll do 22.
Which one? 22?
Yeah.
22 is good. So let me bring those questions up like you said. That'll make life a little bit easier for everybody. Maybe. Okay, so, all right, go for it.
Okay. So why does a Kantian view typically not govern most management decisions? This is because, unlike utilitarianism, Kantian views do not regard the context of the moral situation, and it's more of an unconditional or universal ethics is Kantian views, and they would not allow a business to basically respond. They wouldn't respond in a way that would consider really outside influences.
Okay. Why would that be such a big deal?
Well, just because, I mean, businesses do kind of need to respond to the culture, to the times, you know, they need to have that outside context instead of just having like, nope, this is our ethical opinion no matter what. And we're not going to go with the flow or sway with the times or anything like that. It'd be a poor business choice.
Excellent, because the consequences for business can be more severe than they might be for individuals. Exactly. So, you know, if we agree that one of business's priorities is to generate profit or to take care of the business, after a certain period of time, a Kantian type approach would really be hazardous to maintaining the functionality of the business. Okay, excellent. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, I've got both of these. Hold on just a second. I got an idea. There we go. All right, so Porter, you're up. Wait, nope, wrong one. Caden, you're next.
Hey, Mr. Lambert, before he starts real quick, do you want to say all of the questions that have already been answered?
You know what? While you guys are doing that, I'll see if I can mark them just really quick. And also, I realize it would probably be helpful if I shared the screen. If I'm going to put all of these up on this, that always helps. So give me just a second and let me mark them, and then we'll go from there, okay? All right, so let's go spotlight.
Huh?
Okay, so, yeah, let me do that first. So, no, not spotlight. Okay, let's just do stamps. One's been done. 2 has been done. 4 has been done. 5, 6, 7, 9. Oop. Oh. Dang it. I can't move it. That's not very helpful. I can't this time, but I will next time. Does that work?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I had just said, Caden, you're up.
Has anyone done number 33?
Number 33. Nope, it's good.
All right. So it says, explain how ethics and law can be both the same and different. And I said, law is sort of like standardized ethics. Everyone has very similar ethical standards, but you don't have, but you have to follow the law. Whereas you don't really have to practice good ethical behavior if you don't want to, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that idea of standardized ethics. These are the reaction, this is the action you are supposed to take in this situation. So, for example, anybody who gets to a stop sign, the law says everybody stops. Now, if I have somebody in the back seat that is in the middle of delivery, right, I might run through that light. But I understand that there's a consequence involved, right? So the law says what we're supposed to do. Ethics gives us the idea of what we ought to do. Very good. Okay, thank you, Caden. All right, Josh.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Is 26 taken?
26 is not.
Virtues emphasize the formation of character. I would say that was true because virtue is showing high moral standards, and by showing high moral standards, that eventually will shape what your character, how you act every day, and who you are.
Excellent. Okay. And so how does virtue, so if virtue is focused on the formation of character, how does that lead us to ethics? How does that guide ethics?
Because if you ethics has to do involves morals. So if you're morally a good person, you're going to be making more ethically good choices and taking in consideration everything and everyone around you.
Okay, excellent. So if we were to compare this to the nature versus nurture argument, am I inherently good or can I be made good? Virtue argues we're going to make good choices because of our inherent nature, not because of the situation itself. We're naturally going to be guided to the right choice. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. All right, Jackson, you're up. Jackson? Okay. Next we have Tanner.
All right. Yep, that's me. Can you scroll up on your page just so I can see what ones haven't been answered yet?
Unfortunately, that my goal of being able to tell you which ones had or hadn't been answered is not really working very well.
It's all
so
good.
I'll fix this next time though.
Okay, no worries. So I'm thinking like number 42.
Number 42 has been answered.
Okay. Let's try 33.
Okay, give me just a second. Yeah, I can, but I can't do it right now, so I will do that on the next time we do this, Jackson. Okay, and sadly, Tanner 33 has been answered as well.
Okay, let's try 28.
28 is good.
Okay. So for utilitarianism, the idea is not, it's not how humanely people are treated. I thought it was more along the lines like the pleasure versus pain scale, because they were trying to put a weight on happiness, was my understanding of the utilitarianism.
Okay. So repeat that one more time. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm fighting a cold.
Not a problem.
So, like for utilitarianism, the intent of the actors and how humanely people are treated are not the determining factors.
Okay, you are
The
very
determining,
much,
oh, sorry. So the determining factors for utilitarianism, if I remember right, that was the pleasure versus pain scale, kind of the pros versus cons of everything. It's more based for businesses, because then they can weigh risk versus consequence.
yes, I would agree with that. So if that's the case, then what approach, and I'm going to open this to anybody, what approach would that describe? The intent of the actors and how humanely people are treated are the determining factors of which ethical model?
Wasn't that the justice theory?
That is Rawls' justice theory. Why people did what they did and how humanely they're being treated, that is something that Rawls was concerned with. Very good. Haley, was that you? Or who was that?
It was me, Winter.
Winter, okay. All right, give me just a second. Let me see if I can bring this up and I can get these marked pretty quickly. All right, so let's see. I apologize that I didn't get this all done ahead of time, folks.
One's been answered, two's been answered,
Yep.
That was left, and then wiping mine out right now.
four's been answered.
Let's see, 4 through 7, and then 9, and 14, 16, and 17. 22, 24, 26 through 28, 33, and 42. Okay, so let's save that. Stop share screen, and this. All right, we do have it marked now. All right, so next person up is, no, wrong one. There we go. Sam, you're up.
Was 21 done yet?
21 has not been done yet.
So an action is ethical if it is, so this one.
This was one where I accidentally erased all the answers, yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of made a this to this point thing.
Okay.
Good, question mark, for the greater good, for yourself. It's justifiable. And tools kind of stop me. So an action is, that's kind of a hard one for me to answer.
Without having the context.
Well, there's also all the different ways that people justify or say this is ethical because of this, like even with the utility chase, the utility one. That's saying it's ethical if it helps the most people, regardless if it's actually ethical or not. Like even if it's not good, we'll say it's good because it works out for me.
Well, now here's the thing. It will be ethical if it is the thing that makes it ethical, if it is beneficial, if the benefits outweigh the harms, right? And if I have followed the process of how to determine those utils correctly, if we followed that hedonic calculus that they talk about, right? And so it's not that it's ethical if it is and it's not ethical if it isn't, right? It's a yes or no. If there's not varying degrees of ethicality in a utilitarian perspective, right? As I follow the math or I don't.
Exactly. So depending on which system you're following, then all of a sudden your action is either ethical or it's not, and it just depends how you determine ethical.
Okay, so if that's the case, then how do I, if I was being called, let's say, the trolley car example, right? And so I choose, and I remember somebody posting this, I choose not to do anything. The same consequence occurs that would occur if I pulled on the handle, one person dies, but because I didn't take an action, at least I do not necessarily bear consequence for having taken one. I bear consequence for not doing anything, but it's not the same as by my direct action I caused it, right?
I kind of talked about this where we justify our actions, and that one I think is really hard to answer because everybody wants to be that good guy, but we're given options that we might not even consider. Like in this case, if I did nothing, I could just blame those guys are already there, they knew what they were doing. You know, when they took on the work, they knew there was a trouble. And unfortunately, they were there at the wrong time, but that doesn't fall on me or my conscience because when you do certain work, you know it's dangerous, you know the risk. And so you can kind of go through your life just justifying it. You know, I'm not a bad guy. I didn't kill that one guy. This had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the flip side, you still have to sit there and think, if I had pulled up lever, there'd be 4 more people alive. 5
Right.
minus 1.
Right. Well, and so the idea of ethics is not just how do we defend the choice we make, but how do we defend the thought process that went into that? Because like you said, utilitarianism might suggest I need to take action A in this situation. Rawls's theory of justice might suggest I need to do B. Whereas a theory of virtue would suggest instead of throwing somebody else in front of the tracks, I should jump in front of the trolley and stop it with my own body. That's option C. Now you wouldn't have to defend option C because you'd be dead. But, so the idea is that it's not just what decision did I make. When we talk about ethics, we have to understand and be ready to justify the process that led us to the choice we made, right? With my kids, it's always not just about what did you do. It's the most pointless question in the world to a teenager. Why did you do it? Because guaranteed the answer is going to be, I don't know. Okay, Sam, I'm sorry.
There is one other thing I was kind of thinking about. There's certain states that have laws that say you have to intervene if there's an emergency. So in this case, kind of like I said, if I did nothing, the 5 people were dead. Certain states you don't get that option. You have to pull that lever. Otherwise, you are directly held responsible. Yeah, you can be held responsible even though your inaction resulted in a smaller loss of life. The fact that you didn't take an action, unless you can clearly show why you didn't do that, that my inaction was the best course of action, it can be really tricky. Okay, thank you. All right, so we are on to Andrew Hall.
So I'll do number 23.
Number 23. Okay, go for it.
So which of the following best describes how unconditioned ethics is a challenge to a global organization? And I put that if unconditional ethics could be a challenge to a global organization dealing with suppliers, supply chains, customers, and competitors in vastly different cultures. So things like morality and ethical categories differ through experiences and culture.
Okay, so the idea of the unconditioned ethics means what? What are unconditioned ethics?
I would say that almost everyone has like the same baseline, like the same, like everyone knows what is ethical automatically.
Or making the assumption that everybody comes from that, right? So we've all used shampoo, but there are, sorry, bad pun, I'm gonna stop. Yeah, so this idea that we assert that there are universal ethics could be problematic. Okay? Yeah, sadly, Kyle, it wasn't that good of a joke, or I would have finished.
That's what made it even fun.
Okay, Billy, you're up. Okay, is Billy with us today? Does not appear as though she is. Okay. All right. Next we have Haley. Oh,
So I'm going to answer question 15. Which of the following best describes managerial ethics?
Okay,
It's a balance of responsibility between yourself, your employees, or whoever works under you, and the business that you're working for.
okay. So how do I decide? I mean, if I have the obligation to myself, the obligation to those below me, and the obligation to those above me. How do I rank those from a managerial perspective?
Well, the way that I look at it is it's all based on experience and like meeting requirements. If people below you don't meet the requirements or don't have the experience to do something, but you do, then you should do it. Or if it's something that needs to be done at a higher position, then it would get put onto the organization that you're working for.
Okay. I think the question I have is this, because I've been put in this, so I'm the interim department chair for this department, which means I am responsible for 16 faculty members and all of their students and things like that. So I answer to a dean, but then I also have faculty underneath me who have responsibility to their programs. So I have a faculty member who comes to me who says, we cannot continue to teach these classes unless we hire another faculty member. And our students are being negatively affected if we don't hire that faculty member. Okay? Very logical issue, right? So I go to the dean and I say, look, program X needs an extra faculty member or they can't teach these classes. And the dean says, I understand that, but program Y, program Z, and program A are in the exact same situation and their students are also being harmed. So I need you to tell that faculty member to buckle up and deal with the fact that they can't have the faculty member. Okay, so I have a faculty who makes a completely logical argument to me about how their students are being negatively affected, and I have a dean who's telling me, well, these other programs are equally being negatively affected. In that situation, based on this idea of managerial ethics, how do I decide? Do I continue to fight for my faculty member? Do I continue to, or do I take my dean, who is my boss, and I can understand the argument that multiple programs are being negatively affected? Do I go back to the faculty member and say, sorry, we just don't have the money? How do I make that decision?
It could go either way. There are other options that you could go about it as well, like getting with your staff and brainstorming a way where it would be fair to everyone, and think of a way.
I'm just going to say right now, that's not going to happen. It's never going to be. I'm just going to tell you now, I'm never going to find an answer that's going to be fair to everyone.
No, you're not.
I'm just saying, but please keep going.
But think of a way that you could fairly work around this program or whatever class it is that's having problems, to work it in. I don't know. It's hard to say because being a manager, you're put in a position where you don't want to let your staff down, and it's your responsibility to fight for them. But you also have to understand where the organization is coming from, because you're the one that has to answer to that organization.
Exactly. And that's the exact point, is that you have an equal obligation to both sides of the equation. Kyle, you said you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, and I was thinking not so much along the lines of like you and the dean and other teachers, more along the lines of like a company that's, making money. And I just feel like, yeah, the obligation to the company sometimes comes a little more weighted down to employees, such as like, I don't know, somebody who just got hired on, or, maybe as a temporary employee for someone, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have as much say as employees that are running the show, or possibly invested in it even more? I don't know. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean.
The concept is a little different when you're looking I guess, variables.
Okay, so one point that I'm going to make, and I appreciate you bringing this up, Kyle, because up to this point at the end of this chapter, we've only really talked about 3 different ethical models. Right? Well, 4 actually. You've got the ethic of virtue, being a good person. You've got utilitarianism, a almost mathematical calculation of happiness. You've got deontology, which is an ethics based on, this is Kantian stuff. Or no.
Nature and obligation, or duty.
Duty and obligation.
Nature, duty, and obligation.
I'm most ethical when I am fulfilling my responsibilities. And then we've got Rawls's ethic of justice, right? Which is a consideration of the condition or situation that something's happening in, and fairness to all people involved. There are other models that we haven't talked about yet. You bring up this concept of culture, or, those people that are most likely to benefit the community, I'm going to take care of them first. I have a closer relationship with them. This is the classic concept of the parent who says, all things being equal, nothing is ever going to be equal to my child.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the person that's worked here for 20 years that I know really, really well is automatically going to have a leg up on the person who's a temporary hire or a person who hasn't been here very long, because that relationship gives me specific responsibilities or obligations that are more likely to lend themselves to an ethic that I can live with, right? So for example, in the trolley car, would it make there's a classic example of the train is crossing the track and the guy is standing at the lever to switch the track, and then they hear the sound of their child running on the track coming to talk to them. They know that if they flip the switch, they'll save their child, but they'll kill everybody on the train. They don't, that's the thing. An ethic of care says, if it's my child, I'm justified in doing whatever I have to protect those that are closest to me. That's a great ethic for being able to live with that community, but it can have a heavy, heavy price on anybody else. Okay. Thank you, Haley. That was a fantastic answer. Thank you for bringing that one up. Okay, Megan, you're up.
Okay, I chose 35.
35? That's fine, but Catelle's going to have some harsh words for you afterwards.
Sorry. Insights of great philosophers relevant today. I think why they're relevant today is it's not a set of this is how you act in this situation. It's not like laws, how it's this is exactly how you're supposed to react. It's ways of thinking of how to process those decisions.
And it allows us to really live so that it doesn't matter what culture I go into, I will always be considered. The universal laws that I'm creating are not applied to other people. They are applied. It's just about how I act. I'm not going to try to control or impose on anybody else. I'm just going to be, that ethic of virtue applies to me, not to other people. Excellent. Okay, next. Let me write that one down. Hold on, I don't think I wrote down Haynes either. Give me a second. Okay, that was Haley. And then Megan did 35. Okay. All right, so next we've got Cattell, yep.
Okay, well, that was my last question, so I'm going to attempt. You need a little help at number 38.
Okay.
What is the most important aspect of John Rawls' political philosophy? And then he has 3 principles and then 5 basic procedure steps towards those.
Okay.
He has original fairness, the veil of ignorance, and the humanity of acceptance of an original position.
Okay, so I want you to define one of those 3.
I was just going to tell you all 5 the others.
Okay. Okay.
One was entering into a contract. The second was agreeing unanimously about that contract. And then 3 was based on freedom of speech.
and I'm trying to read some numbers that are very small. And then maximizing welfare for individuals or people that were in great need, and then stability of the contract.
Okay. All right. I will take that. So Scott, you're up. Yep, you're here. What you got? Scott, can you hear me? I'm going to come back to you. So let's go to Logan.
All right, I'm going to do number 20, Kant's moral theory.
Okay, hold on just a second. Okay, I will come back to you on the next one then, Scott. All right. Number 20,
All right,
morale.
so basically, Kant's moral theory is that we all follow the same universal morals. Consequences do not determine our choices when making decisions. The determining factor would be what fulfills our needs and duties.
Okay. What is the benefit of that type of approach? Why would that be a desirable approach?
Because I guess you don't want to focus on the consequences, but the task at hand, basically.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Why would a universal law that applies to everybody be desirable as an ethical standard? Anybody? Somebody online? Casey. Sorry, I got five. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So I think it would be like desirable as a universal standard just because then everyone would like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. Like, you know, everyone kind of see the same moral, like the same like in different decisions, everyone would think that one thing is like the right option because they all have like the same moral compass. However, I also kind of think it's not good for society because then we're all the same and it's weird.
Okay, the nice thing about an absolute law is that everybody knows what the law is, and it makes it very easy to follow it. The problem is, well, very rarely does one absolute law work equally in every situation. And like we've said before, Kant's attitude strips out context or the unique elements of the situation. He just kind of says, this is how it's supposed to be, period. And we lose the ability to say, but in this case, there are mitigating standards or exacerbating standards. And mitigating means it does what to the consequence? Increase or decrease? Mitigation means to decrease. Exacerbation means to increase. So the fact that, for example, if I kill somebody, that's bad. If I kill somebody that is a family member, is that less or worse? That's worse, right? That's an exacerbating standard. Or if the person I killed was under the age of 18 as a minor or as a child, we would say that's worse than, for example, killing somebody in their prime or somebody who had just broken into my house, right?
And there's also like when a dad kills the guy that killed his son. It's bad when people say, well, we killed his son, so it's not bad.
Or as bad. Right, it's mitigation. Because, if you've ever seen the movie A Time to Kill by John Grisham with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson. These two men rape Samuel L. Jackson's daughter, who's about 9 years old, try to kill her. Jackson shows up when they're taken to the police station and kills them both. He is then put on trial. And the question is, did he kill? Absolutely. But was the killing justified? And that was the debate of this movie. Okay? All right, Scott, let's try you.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yep.
Okay, so all of the ones I have been taken.
That tends to be the case. Do you have another one you could maybe grab?
I've been looking and there's not any of them that I feel overly comfortable with, like getting the right answer.
Okay. What if I give you a hint on one of them?
Okay.
Hey, which one would you pick if I was to give you a hint?
Let me look at which one I was looking at. I was looking at number 20 the most, kind of trying to find that one as we were talking in class.
Yep, and we just answered number 20.
Yep.
Okay, if I was to ask you, could you describe original position?
I could try.
Hey, go for it.
So like when I like with the original position, kind of like what I think of it when I was reading it is kind of like the original stand on everything before like what your gut feeling was before like you start really debating about like what's ethical, what's moral, like what would you do originally before you got like all of this extra input.
Okay, it's this idea of what would be the natural reaction or natural inclination before we started adding bias, before we started adding extra information that would cause us to move one side to another. What would be the natural north in a situation? Okay, 100% correct. Now I'm going to ask you to go one step further. Who advocated the concept of natural or original position?
Which is the say it was Kent, but not sure.
It wasn't Kant.
Was it Rawls?
It was Rawls, because original position adds to another concept, which is, starts with a V. The veil of ignorance, because that's what would have allowed us to get to original position. Okay? Excellent. Scott, I'm going to give you full credit for that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, it's only fair. All right. Okay, let's see, who's next? We already did Logan, so Zach, you're up.
I'm kind of in the same boat that Scott was in.
Okay, can I ask you, can I make up a question for you then?
Sure.
And so you can kind of gun for it? So we just talked about original position, and we talked about something that made original position possible, which is a concept of the veil of ignorance. Can you tell me what the veil of ignorance is?
Back. I'm drawing a blank right now on the veil of ignorance.
Okay. I am going to let you call on somebody to help you out.
Okay. Haley?
So I have the veil of ignorance as eliminating any bias or self-interest. So going into it without thinking about sex, color, whatever's going to benefit you or something that's the same as you, but taking it out of the picture.
It's not playing devil's advocate. It's taking out things that would naturally make me lean one way or another. So it's, for example, which person do I let go? The person who's been working here for 20 years or the single mother who's raising 3 kids? Why would Rawls say we need to have a veil of ignorance?
Well, decisions made out of emotions aren't always the best decisions.
Because he's saying that emotion can cause us to be unfair. So the more we draw that veil of ignorance of ignoring facts that could distract us from the question at hand, increases the likelihood that we're going to be able to answer the question fairly rather than emotionally. Okay?
The word he used for that, he said no identity. We have no identity.
We want to strip identity because identity causes us to lean one way or another. Okay? Excellent. Thank you for that. All right. Kyle, you're up.
pull up the question?
I can.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with 12 or 39. 12 probably.
Okay. Did you want to go with 39 or do you want to stick with 12?
I'll do 12. Yeah,
All right.
I'll do 12.
Let's do 12.
I mean, so his critique of utilitarianism, I mean, he's still, interested in making the whole, or society as a whole benefit, but he's also looking at the guy who doesn't have as much or doesn't have as many to try and bring everybody up as a whole for his concept of justice and fairness.
Okay. So he's constantly saying that those that are underprivileged or are at risk tend to be negatively affected by utilitarianism. Utilitarianism allows us to ignore consistent or historical or systemic elements that tend to disfavor certain groups over other groups. As long as I can show a net gain on happiness, it doesn't matter who gets left out in the harm, right? And Rawls says the problem is that there are certain groups that typically are on the harm side, and we have to keep that into account, which is really tricky because what are we supposed to strip out of our consideration? The emotion and identity, which tends to be how we identify sometimes which groups are in those minority or marginal groups. So we're supposed to ignore that, but on the same hand, according to Rawls, in order for us to achieve fairness, we have to.
See, doesn't that go directly against like virtue ethics and being virtuous because it's stripping away your identity, and how can you have virtue if you have no identity?
Well, but the thing is that these are not necessarily all operating at the same time. So if you're arguing virtue identity or virtue, you're not necessarily going to be able to use Rawls's justice argument at the same time. One automatically cancels out the other. So you're going to have, so you can have elements of some, but to some degree, applying one automatically precludes you using other models at the same time because they use different metrics. Or, for example, Rawls's identity automatically precludes concepts of virtue and utilitarianism, right? Okay. All right. Let's see who's next. Winter, you're up.
Okay, so I'm going to do number 19. The concept that preventing harm is the only purpose for which the state's power can be justly used is called the harm principle.
Okay. What makes the harm principle problematic?
From reading it, it kind of suggests that the only good reason for a government kind of body to use its power to implement things is if it's going to harm someone else. So as far as laws go, stealing is against the law, but stealing something doesn't outright granted, some people will bring weapons. However, outright stealing something isn't physically hurting someone.
Well,
so that could be a problem with it.
Well, it hurts the owner. They've now lost property that they have the right to and that they might need. So I think an example that came up during the video. The video is a classic question of the harm principle. What was the underlying argument behind Bloomberg's attitude about soda? It is directly tied to obesity, which is a clear cause of harm to public health. Right? So based on that argument, the only time the government should get involved is if it harms somebody. Bloomberg used that argument. Whether he used it fairly or not, completely different discussion, but that was his ethical justification for the harm principle, or for the soda ban. And it wasn't even a soda ban. He did not ban soda. What did he ban? The size of soda. Okay? So, and somebody brought up the question of smoking as another example of the harm principle. Now, what's the difference between smoking and soda?
One sucks.
Okay, Sam,
The health effects
what do you mean?
of the smoke and your cancer, if you drink too much soda, that has very little to do with health.
Sadly, you're talking to somebody who's a type 2 diabetic, and type 2 diabetes leads to all kinds of problems.
Well, like, if we look at something like smoking or just nicotine overall, the way we justify using it is different between people. So some people say, like, I do chewing tobacco.
Okay.
And what started is I work long hours, I do labor work. And so there's times where you're super tired or you're sore. You put that in, you keep working, and it energizes you.
Okay.
People say that's bad for you.
Okay.
Well, I would argue, no, it's not.
Well, it's not that it's not harmful, but it's that you understand that, but you still choose to do it.
Benefit than harm, in my opinion. So
Okay.
if we decide it's harm,
Okay.
my choice is yours.
Now, there's a difference. I'm going to make an argument, and I think this is going to highlight the difference. There is a difference between chewing and smoking. They both deliver nicotine, but what is the primary difference between smoking and chewing?
One hits your lungs and one hits your bloodstream.
Well, you can get cancer from both, but here's the big difference. If I smoke, what happens when I smoke? It goes around. I cannot control. I mean, if I wore a bubble over my head when I smoked, then I could make the argument that my smoking doesn't affect anybody else. But when my smoking causes secondhand smoke, which can cause cancer to people who choose or don't choose to participate in it, right? So if you chew, that does not affect you. I mean, other than if you were to spill it, it's not going to. It happens.
Oh, yeah.
Or even worse, you accidentally drink from your spit jar, which has happened. I'm not pointing anybody out, but the difference is chewing does have a limited impact, whereas smoking affects anybody. And that's where the government felt that the harm principle outweighed and that's why, for example, smoking is banned within buildings, right? Because of the confined nature of it and the lasting possibility for people to be harmed outside of their own control, right? So that's where comparing drinking soda, which is only going to affect you, or chewing compared to smoking are very divergent. And that's where the harm principle kind of comes into place. Okay, excellent. All right, let's see. We've got Kason.
All right. I'll probably go with number 40.
Okay. Go for it.
So if I understand it correctly, the veil of ignorance is anything that might cause bias in making a decision. That doesn't even have to be a physical characteristic or anything, right? There's no limit to that. It can be anything, correct?
Correct.
So I would say, other than what you said, that in order to be just, that you kind of have to look at those characteristics. But besides that, I mean, as an example, if you're a hiring manager and you're looking at someone with different qualifications, right, you would probably want the most qualified person in order to be fair to your stockholders or the people they have to work with or the profit of the company. If you're choosing the least qualified person, or if you're just choosing people at random, since you're going to use the veil of ignorance, you're not going to look at anything that might cause you to be biased towards any one person, then you might choose someone that might end up doing harm to the company and then could therefore make you unethical because you were an accomplice in lowering profit in the company, I suppose you could say, or ruining the reputation.
So this gets into, for example, last semester I spent a very long section of the book, almost too much, talking about the question of diversity in hiring and affirmative action. And the argument that if you can truly compare two people solely based on their qualifications, I should strip out any identity that isn't relevant to the qualifications for the job. Okay, but the law says the problem is that tends to, that if you do that, there are factors that can influence a person's resume or qualifications that are outside of their control, and that inherently imbalance the hiring practice.
Right,
And
and
so
that
that
seems to be the goal of the veil of ignorance, right? Is to get rid of all those things that don't really have an impact on their capability to do the work.
Right.
But and making a dogma of you can't look at any characteristics whatsoever seems to also be a bad thing.
Exactly. So the veil of ignorance is a valuable and also